Frank Giavello with The Contending. Oscar winner Ron Howard has crafted his boldest, most beguiling work to date with Eden, and I'm so very pleased to be speaking with him. Welcome, Ron.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Ron, congratulations on a truly exceptional work. I honestly think it's your best film, and I love the bleakness.
Well, thank you. Me too. Matthias Herndl, our cinematographer, and I, who I'd worked with on the first season of Genius about Einstein. That's how I met Matthias and Noah. And in fact, I was telling them both about Floriana and the Galapagos and this mystery because I'd written an outline, and I was sharing it with them, and they both just loved the story. Matthias is German and didn't know anything about it, but started doing his own research. But when I went to the Galapagos, which I had done 15 years, well, now 15 years ago, so maybe 10 years before this, um, um, I found the island of Floriana to be a desert island. It's bleak. And so that look on Sydney Sweeney's face when she first arrives, and it's like, this is it. This is going to be where we live. How are we going to survive? That's the way I felt on their behalf when I first set foot on that island. So it was important that Matthias find a color palette and that we find a way of shooting it that would let the island in its own way have its own noirish vibe because it was oppressive and dangerous. When it was beautiful in that kind of raw, primal way, but not because it was green and gorgeous and lush and a place you'd want to go have a vacation.
Wow. Well, I think I love the shift and the blends. Okay, it's because it's a thriller and it's a comedy and it's a suspense drama and it's action adventure, and it all works so well. Can you speak a little bit about getting all of that right?
Well, yeah, I mean, the characters are outrageous. And when I first encountered them in this museum in the Galapagos, where they talked about Floriana and the violence, uh, and I picked up Margaret's version of the story, Dora's version of the story, which you could buy in the gift shop, and it just took over our family dinner table conversation. And it's all anyone could talk about because it's like a season of Survivor, or I mean, it's a true crime thriller, but the characters were so outrageous. And there's this blend of 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 characters, this collision of personalities that is just so vivid. It is like somebody cast a season of reality television, and but this is the story. This is what really happened. So yeah, it's funny because it seems there's a kind of an absurdity to the fact that they're there on that desert island, believing that it could be Eden. But it's also this cautionary story, and I felt a lot of empathy for them because they're there because they mean well. They're trying to do something. I don't
Yeah.
agree with their choices, but they're proactive, and yet they're faced with who they ultimately are, the truth about who they are, in ways that many of them find very challenging and even threatening and dangerous and tragic. So I just thought it's like Shakespeare or Greek tragedy or a good season of reality television. It and I really just felt like it was an opportunity. It took me quite a long time to commit to making it as a film because I always knew it wasn't a Hollywood movie, it wasn't a studio film, it was too bleak for that. But I also believed that it was being revealed to me that there was an audience for this story.
Yeah.
Shows like White Lotus or they were telling me that there's an audience out there that would be as fascinated by these characters as I am. And so when I was working on Genius and I'm showing my little outline to Matthias and to Noah he sort of picked up at the baton and said, I'll write it on spec.
Wow.
And that's what he did. And so this is a long answer to your question, but getting his research, my own, everything else that was available by now, the Satan Comes to Eden documentary existed. That was useful. and deepening this research, we went to the Galapagos. We talked to some people who knew Margaret Whitmer, knew the Whitmers, who were
Mm.
still there on the island, um, and got their take on things. And Noah is a very witty, funny, humanistic writer, and that blend really came from the screenplay. Then the next step was this great cast. I wouldn't have made it if we couldn't put together an amazing ensemble, but they also contributed to the script and the tone and their own research. So it just kept evolving and on through into post production.
Let's talk about the cast for a minute, because especially the female actors, because I think you got such great performances out of Anna, Sydney, and Vanessa. The Baroness in particular is a survivor at all costs, and
Yeah,
I appreciated that.
yeah,
Can you talk about the casting these women?
yeah. Well, first you needed somebody brave, right? And Anna doesn't present herself that way. She's kind of she's confident and successful, but she's nothing like the Baroness. She doesn't come off with that kind of bravado at all. And yet she was, I thought, so brave and so successful in Blonde. And so I just felt like she had it in her. And I just said to Anna, I said, in this day and age, she'd either be a gangster or social media guru.
Yeah.
I mean, she'd be an influencer. And so, I think let's try to make her as modern as she can be in her sensibility, because I think the Baroness was ahead of her time. Uh, Sydney is one of these people who doesn't like, reminds me a little bit of Tom Hanks, doesn't really want to talk about it a whole lot, doesn't want to analyze it a lot, and yet just has great instincts for character and truth and honesty, keeps it simple, doesn't over intellectualize, yet has a connection with humanity, loves audiences, loves the story, and thinks like a movie maker. She just puts herself in the place of her character. She was very impressive to me, a hard worker. Vanessa is like an intellectual, an artist. She did unbelievable research and really mined the depths of the Dora character and her relationship to Ritter and Ritter's ideas. And she believed that Dora was a true acolyte who ultimately was a deeper, more passionate believer than even Ritter himself. And she found that in the research about Dora, but also in Noah's script and in her own mind. And Vanessa and Jude together were like this dynamic duo of creativity in the most
Mm.
least neurotic, most constructive way. And it was a thrill for me to try to create the environment where these three different groups of people could really flourish as artists, and characters. It was really fun for me.
Ron, I feel like as a craftsman, you are challenging yourself more now than you ever have. I like Spielberg, like Eastwood, like even Scorsese. You're making some of your best work. What is it about getting older that allows you to take these risks?
Well, I mean, I don't, I've never wanted to, really to repeat myself or to rest on any laurels. And I'm looking around, and people are doing some great stuff out there. It's harder than ever for a studio to figure out what to invest in.
Yeah.
But if you're willing to do what we did, make a movie as an indie, push those boundaries, get people to work for less money, hustle. You can find ways to get projects that you're passionate about made. And this is just one that had been with me for a long time. And Henry Fonda told me when I was acting on The Smith Family, this very little known, easily forgotten television series, for a good reason, because it wasn't very good. But I was in it for a year and a half in between the Andy Griffith Show and Happy Days. And And Henry Fonda was like the first Hollywood grown-up to look at my Super 8 movies, read some of my scripts, and say, you should really be a director. And
Wow.
but he said to me, he said, if you don't if you don't take a real risk, every so often, you're not really you're not really doing justice to the medium, or the audiences or yourself. And so throughout time, I have taken some for me at each step, they felt like risks, and some pretty big ones. Some of them worked out, some of them not so much for audiences, but for me, they're important stepping stones. And I'm just continuing to do that. And yeah, you're right. I mean, Eden is certainly one of those where I stepped, out of my comfort zone a bit to tell this story.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the movie bowed at TIFF last year, and it seemed to divide critics. I think some seem to resent the fact that you made a movie about truly flawed humans. We're living in a strange time right now where, some people are offended by that.
Well, I don't know. I mean, again, I think um, it, one friend of mine who's saw the movie early on, who's very accomplished, um, and has done an array of different kinds of work. He said, coming from you, this is going to be a bit of an odd one for people. And if not everybody is going to lean into it right away, and they kind of need to understand what it is before they really understand what it's trying to be before they see it.
Mm.
Otherwise, they may be a little bit thrown, and there may be a little disconnect. I don't know. There may be some truth in that. We'll see.
I think maybe so, but I think you tap into some. I mean, a lot of us feel really disillusioned right now, and so it's seductive to think about turning off, escaping, and so the parallels with today in 1930s are scary.
Very scary. And with the onset of this kind of autocratic, fascistic kind of trend in government, um, in the wake of World War I. We're not in the middle of a depression right now as they were, but I know most people don't feel economically stable at the moment, and just as the Industrial Revolution was changing, the way people made a living then, we're facing that with technology today. So it's a very destabilizing time, and the truth is at a premium. We don't quite know what to believe, and it's very tempting to romanticize the idea that if I could just get the hell out, I could have a truer, better, happier life. And I I here's a case study. These people tried it. It's it doesn't work quite so well because societies are made up of people.
Yes.
People can be the problem, and that's a little bit that's a little on Ron Howard like to say, because I most of my movies celebrate what people can be and what the upside is. Here's a case where it's an acknowledgement of what our flaws and foibles can mean to us as well.
Ron, I want to congratulate you on your Emmy nomination. And my last, I honestly really hope you win. You were so good on the studio.
I had a
Uh,
blast.
my last question to you were there aspects of this story in doing the research that you wanted to include but didn't include, or you found were too maybe outrageous to believe?
Um, no, no. I mean, we leaned into that, and there's nothing that we hid from. There was one. If anything, we condensed and focused some things. Like one of the things that was interesting is that they did become somewhat famous, and Ritter had let people interview him, and he was becoming known, and he pretended he didn't like it, but he did. Other boats would stop by there, and like Hancock, and because Hancock was also going back and giving reports, to the Western press, and they were becoming a bit of a sensational story. And and they started to look forward to the next yacht that was going to show up and bring goods. So we collapsed it and made it all be just, gifts that Hancock was giving them. But in reality, they sort of lost their way because it was hard to live there, and they started depending more and more on handouts. And that really expedited the crumbling of the little, the little culture that existed on the island, and they became very jealous of one another, and who was becoming better known, and that sort of thing. So we collapsed all that into our Hancock story. And if you go online and look up Alan Hancock or and the Galapagos or the Empress of Floriana, he made this little wacky little silent movie that's very campy, where she plays this kind of piratess, and he made a kind of a tongue-in-cheek movie about her, which I think the Baroness took very seriously and thought maybe this was going to be her ticket to Hollywood, but it didn't work out that way for her.
Wow. Ron, listen, thank you so much for taking the time out to speak with me. I love this film, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks for your support. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye bye.